right, guys, we're talking the schedule, and so before the show, we were doing some talking, looking at the different matchups that we liked all throughout the season, but mainly the primetime games. And there were two that we all had in common, and one of them, honestly, both of them will probably be common to most people. But the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is Chiefs versus Ravens. I believe that's, week 3? I'm sure everyone's got that circle on their calendar. Pookie, we'll go to you first. Initial impressions of the Chiefs and Ravens game.
With the Chiefs and Ravens, you have one of the most interesting matches season, in my opinion, because you have the reigning MVP and the reigning Super Bowl champion quarterback facing off against each other. And I think that there's a lot of debate going on around the league on who's more important to their team and who is actually the better offensive weapon. And, a lot of people will tell you Pat Mahomes because of his passing ability, but you can't ignore Lamar Jackson and his dual threat capability. And I think that with this matchup, you're finally going to get an answer to, okay, who's better at this point in their career? Not to mention who all of the other guys that are going to be playing in that game. You got Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Mark Ingram, Marquise Brown, and some pretty good players on defense. And I think that it will be worth the wait whenever it comes around.
Hold up, Drew. Let me get in. Let me end the debate right here. Lamar Jackson is spectacular. He's very valuable to his team. That debate stops here. It's Patrick Mahomes. All right. I don't want none of it. If you want to tell me that Lamar Jackson is more valuable to his team than Patrick Mahomes, we can have that discussion maybe. I don't want to hear any of that as to who's better at this point in their career. There is no doubt who's better. There is no doubt which player is already Hall of Fame bound, which one is ascending the throne to take over for Brady. And let me tell you something, it's not Lamar Jackson, all right? And that's not me being salty when he tore up my Patriots on Sunday Night Football in Week 8 or Week 9 last year. Yeah. It's Pat Mahomes, bar none. Sorry, Pookie, you make good points. Drew, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and talk about the Niners-Cowboys here. There's nothing better than watching a Sunday Night Football game and having Kelly Clarkson sing.
No!
But the thing that's going to happen that's better than that is watching the Niners kick the Cowboys' ass on national TV live.
Carrie Underwood, Drew.
Carrie Underwood.
Carrie
Underwood. Brain fart.
And before that was Faith Hill. But Kelly Clarkson would be good.
Yes, she would
I'll
be
do
good.
it.
But the Niners, I think it's a preview for what the Niners will be. And I think they're going to try to not be like the Rams of a couple years ago. They're going to come and they're going to try to go back to Super Bowl. So I think it'll be a good game. It's week 15 at Dallas. So it'll be a game to watch.
I want to talk about this one real quick, Drew. Obviously, the guy wearing the Cowboy shirt for one. But, okay, Drew, you mentioned this beforehand, this Cowboys fatigue, that the Cowboys are always on prime time, and you can see where people would get tired of it. They're obviously, but you also said you understand it because the Cowboys sell. They're America's team. Texas tunes in to watch the Cowboys win. Everyone else tunes in to watch the Cowboys lose. Someone's going to get a win. There's no neutral party here. But the Cowboys sell. I agree with you. There's nothing better than Carrie Underwood getting us underway. Sunday Night Football. Al Michaels, Chris Collinsworth, sign me up. Best telecast, bar none. There's something special about Sunday Night Football in Dallas, and we'll get quite a bit of that this year with the Eagles going to Dallas. But we don't get the Cowboys 49ers much anymore. And we weren't born to see a lot of these legendary matchups back when these two ran the NFC. And when it was them it was Cowboys or Niners going to the Super Bowl representing the NFC. And finally, we're getting back to Niners-Cowboys where you can argue that both teams are Super Bowl contenders, that both could represent the NFC. And we haven't had that in God knows how long. So it's kind of like this is the first time that our generation gets to see Dallas and San Francisco play in a meaningful game. Combine that with it being Sunday Night Football, Al, Chris, Carrie, Michelle Tafoya, and it's the perfect package, much like Pookie's package. So, I mean, that's for so many reasons I'm excited, and that's why I've got that game. But But as you said before, Drew, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Talking about the Niners, actually one primetime game I'm looking forward to is Week 13 in San Francisco against the Bills on Sunday night as well. Just a matchup, I think it's kind of a test to see if the Bills are a competitive team against a team who just won the Super Bowl. I think it'll be a good defensive game. I don't think it'll be a very high-scoring game. Obviously, both teams are better known for their defenses, but I think it's one of those interesting games that kind of brings back old-school football, and it allows the Bills to kind of take that next step forward if they're gonna even take that step forward. So I think it'll be an interesting game.
Speaking of tough-nosed, hard-nosed football, and later in the season, we're going to have a Thursday night Thanksgiving game with the Steelers and the Ravens. Those always show out when they play against each other. I've witnessed it for years and years, and they never tend to disappoint unless the Steelers are getting their ass kicked. And I think that this year it's going to be special because it's the end of one era with Big Ben in Pittsburgh and the beginning of another one with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. But I'm really thinking that these teams are going to come down to a defensive contest. So the Steelers have one of the top-ranked defenses in the league, and it's going to be interesting to see how they've grown over a year and if they can really stop Lamar Jackson late in the season.
I've got one that neither of y'all circled. I cannot believe none of y'all circled this one. So the NFL revolves around quarterbacks. And we've got an early season matchup, week 3. Same week is Mahomes and Jackson. And honestly, I am almost in the air as to if I had to pick one, which one would I watch? I got Green Bay and New Orleans, man. I know there's so much speculation as to how good Green Bay is going to be this year. But I still have Aaron Rodgers, and I've got Aaron Rodgers going against Drew Brees. I've got 2 top 10 quarterbacks who are probably facing each other for the last time. And I'm very interested in that one. It's a primetime game in New Orleans. Got to love your Superdome primetime matchups. You got a legendary Green Bay franchise. So really what's not to love there? I was kind of surprised that neither of y'all had that one circled. But, I mean, looking down the schedule, we all made a list. We all circled the ones we like. And I made a lot of circles. It was hard to narrow them down. So I do understand why maybe they were left off, but I had to throw that matchup in there because I cannot wait for Rodgers Brees, maybe the last time, unfortunately. And unfortunately, again, it might be a runaway. We just don't know yet. But as long as A-Rod's playing, I'm watching.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to New Orleans. It's a great stadium. I was there for Monday night last year, actually, for the Colts Saints game. It's a great atmosphere. Another stadium I've been to is New England's. Unfortunately, they might not be as competitive this year, but they play Sunday night against the Ravens, Week 10. The reason why I circled this is because we all know Bill Belichick's a great coach, especially on the defensive side. And last year when they played the Ravens in Baltimore, they kind of got their ass kicked. I know Sandy doesn't like hearing this, but it wasn't a great game. And I'm interested to see on how Bill Belichick is able to respond. What is he able to do? He still has a great defense, but I want to see how he's able to make those parts on offense, work with his defense, and see what they can do Week 10. I think it'll be an interesting game only for that reason, though.
Drew, that's also the same week as Indianapolis at Tennessee, major divisional matchup there with your favorite team. So
that's my final matchup actually. Is I got Colts at Tennessee. Thursday night football. Thursday night's known for AFC South having some pretty boring games that turn out pretty interesting at the end. It's no Titans Jags over here, but I definitely think those are probably the 2 teams that are going to be playing for the AFC South division title. So I believe it'll probably be one of the better games, one of the better Thursday night games throughout the season.
Pookie, what else are you looking forward to?
We already kind of talked about him, but I'm really looking forward to the rematch with the Saints. I've been kind of shocked that the Vikings have been able to get past the Saints several times in the playoffs these past couple of years, despite being the superior team in the regular season. And I really want to see what is Minnesota going to do this year? Are they going to turn into a big-time contender, or are they going to remain somebody that can still be beaten by the Saints? And if you ask me, I'm really rooting for the Vikings on this one just because I want to see them make that jump. but it's going to be really interesting with all the defensive and offensive firepower that the two teams have going on for them.
Pookie, let me tell you why I'm also interested in that matchup. It's because I like that. I love that. I love Kirk Cousins, and this is the year for the Vikings to take that next step. They've, like you said, somehow they've gotten past the Saints 2 of the past, 3 years? I'm ready to see the Vikings finally win the division to beat out the Packers. And they have 2 key matchups. The one you mentioned with the Saints. They also get the Seahawks. I believe that Seahawks game's on the road. And this is it. This is the year where we finally get – I think that this is it for Kirk Cousins. Can he be the guy who I see in my heart and my head? I love Kirk Cousins. Obviously, some people still have their reservations about him. And this is it. I mean, this is a great year for it. Unfortunately, they got rid of Stephon Diggs. I say unfortunately for Kirk, but – they filled in that slot with Jefferson. But I did want to bring attention to that Seahawks-Vikings matchup. But I do agree with Pookie, too. I had that Minnesota Saints game scheduled Week 16, too. So non-divisional matchup in Week 16, that could have huge implications all around. But, Drew, what else you got?
I've already said my 3.
I thought you had more. I know you're a guy with tape.
I bet he does.
Yes.
What I mean,
I mean, there's definitely some primetime games. I think there'll be games that are flex. One game that I believe could be one is the Green Bay against Colts. Again, being a Colts fan, but love to see him on prime time. I think it's one of those games. I think halfway through the year, both teams are going to be doing well in their divisions, and I think that they're going to be like, okay, this is one of those games that we can flex maybe to a Sunday night game, maybe even a Monday night game potentially, just because I think those two teams will be very high in their division.
Yeah, Pookie, I want to throw these out there for you too. There are a couple teams that we're not sure about, but they'll both catch the public eye because of who they've got playing for them, but also who they are. I had quite a few games with the Eagles circled. Let's see. We've got Dallas at Philadelphia. There's a Philadelphia-San Fran matchup in Week 4. That's in San Fran. I really am curious to see what the Eagles do because we've been talking about the Cowboys, that improvement that we believe they're going to make a jump given they signed Dak Prescott. Or maybe if you're an Andy Dalton fan, maybe that's good that they don't sign Dak Prescott. Maybe it makes them better. Who knows? I personally believe it's Prescott they need to sign. I believe Prescott's better than Dalton. The financial situation is kind of tricky, so that's a different story. But I'm very curious to see the Eagles and how they perform, especially with these primetime matchups, because they're a team that seems to be right there. And I do believe that the Eagles and Cowboys will find a way to both get in the playoffs, but those primetime matchups could go a long way in determining who wins the division. And maybe if the Eagles are left sitting at home at the end of the season. Baltimore-Cleveland is one I've got marked. I have Green Bay and San Fran marked. That's later in the season, about Week 9. But Baltimore-Cleveland's interesting. You got a divisional matchup. It's later in the year. We don't get to see Cleveland matchups too much on primetime. In fact, I think Cleveland had their first Sunday night football game in forever last year. And it was a chance for a lot of us in the South to see Baker Mayfield and company play. We don't get to see the Browns play too much. So any chance I get to see the Browns play in prime time is interesting. But for reasons that we'll talk about in future episodes when we break down the AFC North especially, this is it for Baker Mayfield. And these are the games he'll have to win. And you got Baltimore coming into your house. Cleveland's got to make the playoffs. That game's going to go a long way in determining that. So that's one I wanted to bring to your attention. But and then so I was talking about the Eagles being one of those teams that I had quite a few of their games circled. The Cardinals are another one. The Cardinals I'm very interested in. Yeah. So, yeah, Pookie, you mentioned Cardinals, Cowboys.
It's a really big chance to see what Kyler Murray can do in his second NFL season. I think that this is a big-time game based on potential because both of these teams made improvements on paper this offseason. And there's a lot of curiosity that goes into that because you want to see okay, what can the Dallas Cowboys do with a new coach? Are they going to make a huge jump, sort of like Green Bay did with Matt LaFleur, wasn't it? And,
Yeah.
We want to see if Mike McCarthy can do the same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. And for the Cardinals, you also look at Cliff Kingsbury and you're like, okay, they've made some improvements on the roster. What can he do as a coach now with a competent core? Is he going to get them to 8-8, 10-6, or are they going to be back at 5-11? You don't know. So that's what I think is going to be very interesting to see, is what kind of jump these two teams make.